Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet Voice Podcast Channel. Tonight we're sleeping in a 19th century England horse caravan, with frozen ground outside and hot coals inside. The road is already darkening. The hedges stand black against a pale winter sky. The fields lie stiff beneath a crust of frost, and the horse ahead sends out clouds of warm breath as if it is quietly steaming like a very patient kettle. You can almost hear the iron rims of the wheels complain over the hardened ruts, because naturally, even in history, the road has opinions. So, before you settle into the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And as you get comfortable, post your location and your local time, so this cold English road can gather listeners from warm rooms all over the world. Now, it's time to rest. You are standing at the edge of an English lane as dusk thickens into winter blue. The year belongs somewhere in the long 19th century, when horse travel still carries much of daily life along the roads. Even as railways are beginning to change the rhythm of distance, the air tastes metallic, almost like a cold iron latch touched by the tongue. Under your boots, the ground is not soft earth but a locked surface, ridged and pale, where yesterday's mud has frozen into sharp little waves. Every step answers with a dry crunch. It is not elegant. It is not poetic to the toes. Still, there is beauty here, stern and quiet. Ahead of you waits the caravan, small against the wide road, but stubbornly alive. It has a bowed roof, painted sides dulled by travel, and wheels that look almost too narrow for the weight they carry. The horse stands between the shafts with its head lowered, patient in the way only working animals seem to manage, as if it has accepted that human beings are fragile creatures who need doors, blankets, kettles, and endless explanations. The harness leather gives off a damp, earthy smell. A brass buckle catches the last light. Somewhere near the step, a chain taps softly against wood. Records confirm that many English roads in the 19th century were still shaped by local maintenance. Toll routes and older habits of travel, even as new engineering slowly improved the main ways between towns, broken stone surfaces helped some roads drain better. Yet winter could still rule them with a frosty little fist. A wagon wheel might find a rut and stay there like a thought you cannot shake. A horse might slow at a rise where the road has hardened into ridged clay. Progress, it turns out, still has to ask permission from weather. You begin to walk beside the caravan while the evening deepens. The lane bends between hedgerows, their bare twigs knitting themselves into the sky. Beyond them, fields stretch into shadow. No electric glow waits over the horizon. No passing motor breaks the spell. Only the creak of wood, the dull ring of iron, and the steady push of hooves press forward. The world feels larger because it is darker. Distances feel more serious because they are measured by muscle, patience, and daylight. A mile is not just a number here. It is a conversation between animal, road, wheel, and weather. The cold reaches for you in careful layers. First it touches your cheeks, then it slips under your collar, then it begins negotiating with your fingers, and your fingers, frankly, are poor negotiators. You pull your coat tighter and keep near the caravan, where a faint promise of warmth seeps from inside. Not enough to heat the road, of course. History is generous, but not that generous. Yet enough to suggest that beyond the small door there may be coals banked low, a kettle waiting, and a place where the body can stop defending itself for a while. Oddly enough, some travellers placed a horseshoe near a doorway, or fastened one to a wagon, not simply as decoration but as a charm of luck and protection. Whether it worked is another matter, and the horse probably had its own private views on humans borrowing its footwear for spiritual security. Still, on a road where night comes early and strangers are met with caution, a small symbol of blessing must have felt like another blanket. You notice one now. Dark iron against the wood, cold to the touch, shaped like a quiet hope. The caravan moves slowly, and that slowness changes how you understand the land. You do not pass through England like a map being folded. You receive it piece by piece, a gate leaning crookedly beside a field, a distant rook calling from a winter tree, a cottage chimney breathing smoke into the low sky. The smell of damp leaves crushed into the road, a narrow bridge where the wheels must line up carefully or risk a jolt that would rattle every cup inside. Each detail arrives with the time to settle. Nothing flashes past, nothing is wasted. In the distance, a church bell marks the hour, its sound softened by cold air. It does not command, it simply reminds. Evening has crossed a threshold, work should be finished, fires should be tended, animals should be fed, and anyone still on the road should have a sensible reason, or at least a convincing story. You, travelling with this little wooden home, have both. The reason is shelter. The story is survival, wrapped in paint, canvas, rope, iron, and a horse's steady breath. Scholars bicker over how much the rise of horse-drawn living wagons in Britain belong to working travellers. Show people, commercial needs, or later romantic tastes for wandering life. The answer may not rest neatly in one place. Roads are rarely neat, lives on roads are even less so. But as you walk beside the caravan in this frozen dusk, the debate feels less like a quarrel of books and more like a question carried in the wheels. Who gets to call a moving shelter a home? Who gets to decide whether travel is hardship, freedom, necessity, or all three at once? The horse snorts, and the sound blooms white in the airs. The driver gives a low word, not sharp, just familiar, and the caravan eases onward. The wheels dip, rise, and settle. Inside, something small shifts on a shelf. Outside, the fields turn silver with frost. You feel the road passing beneath you not as scenery but as a living boundary. Cold below, dark around, and yet leading somewhere. The first stars appear, faint and watchful. The caravan door waits, the night gathers close, and you follow the creak of the wheels into the old winter hush. The small door gives a wooden sigh as you pull it closed, and the road suddenly becomes another world. Outside, the cold keeps its wide kingdom of hedges, ditches, fields, and stars. Inside, you inherit a space so narrow that your shoulders learn humility at once. The latch settles into place with a soft click, a modest sound, yet it feels like a castle gate being drawn shut against winter. Not a large castle, of course. More the sort of castle where one badly placed elbow can threaten an entire shelf of cups. Still, for tonight, this is your stronghold. You stand for a moment while your eyes adjust. The caravan interior is dim, shaped by low light and close surfaces. Wood curves overhead. The ceiling seems to lean down kindly, as though reminding you not to become too ambitious. Along one side, there is a built-in seat that can become a bed. Along the other, small cupboards hold the serious treasures of road life: a kettle, plates, folded cloth, a tin of tea, a knife, a spoon, a candle stub, perhaps a cracked mug that has survived more miles than some politicians survive opinions. Every object has a reason for being here. Nothing is casual. Space has no patience for clutter. A faint warmth gathers near the floor and rises slowly, touching your boots first, then your shins, then your hands as you bring them close to your coat. The air smells of dry wood, old wool, smoke, and tea leaves. Beneath it all lies the animal scent carried in from the road: horse sweat, leather harness, damp straw. It is not unpleasant. It is honest. This home does not pretend to float above labour. It is built from it. The plank beneath your foot remembers mud. The handle by the door remembers cold fingers. The window remembers every face that has peered in, curious, doubtful, kind or not. Household inventories and surviving wagons show that compact horse-drawn homes could include sleeping benches, storage lockers, small stoves or fire arrangements, and carefully fitted furniture, all designed to make a few feet of length serve as kitchen, bedroom, sitting room, and store cupboard. That is the plain fact, and plain facts are sometimes the most impressive. You look around and understand the mathematics of necessity. A cushion is not only a cushion, it is a seat, mattress, padding, and perhaps a hiding place for a spare button or two. A shelf is not merely a shelf, it is the difference between supper and disaster when the wheels strike a rut. You bend slightly as you move, learning the grammar of the room, step here, not there, turn sideways near the cupboard, keep your sleeve away from the candle flame, lift the kettle with care, sit down gently unless you wish to introduce your head to the roof. And history does not require that sacrifice. The walls seem close at first, almost too close, but their nearness begins to soften. In a grand house, warmth escapes upward into rooms no one is using. In this little chamber, warmth stays near, breath clouds less quickly, fingers loosen. The body understands that smallness can be mercy. Oddly enough, some road families treated the inside of a wagon with the pride others reserve for front parlours, polishing brass, painting panels, arranging china, and keeping lace or bright cloth where dust would certainly make a nuisance of itself. A curious footnote tells of visitors being surprised by how orderly and decorative such interiors could be, as though a moving home had no right to beauty. That surprise says as much about the visitor as it does about the wagon. You see the truth more clearly from the bench. When the world outside is uncertain, order inside becomes a form of courage. A little curtain hangs across a window thick enough to hold back draughts, thin enough to tremble when the wind tests the cracks. The glass is cold and dark. If you lift the cloth and you see only the faint outline of the horse, the pale strip of road, and those fields resting under frost, let the curtain fall again. The room returns. A lantern gives the cupboard edges a honey-coloured glow. Shadows sit in the corners like quiet cats. The curved roof gathers the light and folds it downward. You begin to hear the caravan differently now. Outside, wheels and weather have made noise. Inside, the sounds are intimate. A cup clicking against a saucer, a board settling, a coal shifting, your own coat brushing the wall. No agreement has been reached on whether the wagon should be understood mainly as a practical tool of labour, a symbol of freedom, a marker of social exclusion, or a later object of nostalgic imagination. The answer is not tidy, because the people who lived with such vehicles were not tidy categories. Some travelled for trade, some for performance, some because fixed housing was denied or unaffordable, some because roads connected them to work that settled people needed, but did not always respect. In this cramped warmth, theory becomes touchable. A home can be shelter and burden at the same time. A door can protect you and mark you as different. You sit at last, knees close, hands opening in the mild heat. The bench creaks under your weight, not in complaint but in recognition. Above you, a hook holds a coat. Below you, a box may hold tools, mending, or food. Near your shoulder, the wall is smooth where many hands have passed. You begin to feel how life shrinks and expands in such a place. The room is tiny, yet it contains a weather plan, a sleeping plan, a cooking plan, a storage plan, a privacy plan, and a hope plan. That is a great deal for a few boards on wheels. The door remains closed. The frost waits outside with all the patience in England. Inside, the caravan gathers you into its narrow ribs, wooden, smoky, practical, and tender. The night may press against the panels as much as it likes. For now, you're held by a room that moves, a house that listens, and a silence warmed by human care. The heat begins as a small red thought under ash. You notice it only when the kettle gives a faint tick, as metal remembers flame and cold at the same time. The coals do not roar, they breathe. A low glow lives in the firebox, guarded behind iron, careful and contained. because warmth inside a wooden home is a blessing with teeth. You settle near it, close enough to feel your hands loosen, far enough to respect the little furnace like a sleeping cat that may forgive you or may not. The Caravan holds the heat in layers. The stove, if that is what the modest iron heart deserves to be called, stands with its black sides dulled by use. A kettle rests above it, round-bellied, practical, and slightly proud. Every now and then, a thread of steam slips from the spout and disappears into the dim room. The smell is gentle but deep. Coal smoke, singed dust, hot iron, damp wool, drying one slow breath at a time. Outside, frost stiffens the road. Inside, warmth rises with the patience of an old nurse. Period accounts show that coal became a central fuel for many households and trades in 19th century England, especially where transport made it available. While wood, peat, charcoal, and gathered scrap still mattered in poorer or rural settings, in a little travelling home, fuel is not an idea, it is weight, cost, storage, smoke, and survival. You cannot simply build a generous fire because your heart enjoys drama. A large flame would eat fuel, fill the space with fumes, and turn comfort into danger, so the heat is managed like a secret, banked low, fed in small portions, watched with one eye even when sleep approaches. You lean forward and see how carefully the coals are arranged. The brightest pieces hide beneath grey ash, not dead at all, just covered so they will last. A poker rests nearby, blackened at the end. The lid of a small coal box sits close to the floor. Nothing here invites waste. The fire is coaxed, not commanded. A little shake of the grate, a pinch of fuel, a draught opened for a moment, then closed again. You begin to understand that staying warm is not a single act. It is a conversation repeated through the night. The kettle murmurs, not quite boiling, not quite still. It gives the room a homely sound, soft warning that water can become tea can become courage, and courage can become the ability to remove your boots without making the expression of a betrayed saint. Your toes, poor loyal things, have been waiting for this negotiation. You hold a cup between your palms and feel the heat enter through skin, then bone, then mood. It is amazing how quickly philosophy improves when fingers are no longer numb. A curious little superstition held in some households that a fire should not be allowed to die completely overnight, because a living ember carried luck, continuity, and protection into morning. Practical sense and charm often shared the same chair. Keeping coals alive saved labour at dawn, since no one wished to strike sparks in bitter darkness while half awake and morally fragile. Yet the belief also gave the ember a soul of sorts. It became a red eye of the household. Watching through cold hours, you look into the glow and can almost understand that feeling. A home with a living coal seems less alone. The danger remains present, quiet but real. A stove must draw properly, smoke must escape through pipe or vent, cloth must stay away from heat, children, dogs, sleeves, bedding, and sleepy human foolishness must all be managed. Fire is useful because it is dangerous, which is very rude of it, but also historically consistent. You notice the small precautions around you, the kettle handle turned inward, the poker set where it will not roll, the coal box shut, a rug pulled back from the iron. These habits are not decoration, they are memory made into routine. Historians still debate how comfortable many 19th century travelling wagons truly were in winter, because surviving examples often show craft and beauty, while written complaints remind us that cold, damp, muck, and overcrowding were regular companions. Comfort is a slippery word. Compared with sleeping in a ditch, this room is luxury. Compared with a brick house with several hearths, it is a brave little compromise. You feel both truths at once. The heat is real, and so is the frost pressing through every seam it can find. The coals do not defeat winter, they bargain with it. Your ears begin to notice the rhythm of warmth. Coal shifts softly, iron clicks as it expands, the kettle trembles, somewhere in the wall. A draught whispers around a joint and loses confidence near the stove. The room smells less damp now. Gloves hang from a peg, dark at the fingertips, slowly giving up their chill. A pair of socks lies near the heat, though not too near, because nobody wants the evening remembered as the tragedy of the heroic but smoking sock. The Caravan teaches proportion. Enough heat to dry, not enough heat to scorch, enough light to see, not enough to waste the candle. You imagine the hands that know this work without thinking. A palm held near the iron to judge the heat, a quick glance at the colour of the coal, an ear tuned to the sound of the kettle, a body trained to wake when the fire sinks too low or flares too sharply. Such knowledge rarely enters grand histories, yet it keeps people alive. The quiet management of heat is one of the old arts of winter. It belongs to kitchens, cottages, workshops, ships, wagons, and any place where the cold waits just outside the wall. The cup warms your fingers, the bench holds your weight, the glow settles deeper into the ash, red and steady, like a sunset folded into a box. You feel sleep moving nearer, not rushing, just arriving with soft feet. The frozen road remains outside, hard as iron beneath the stars. Here, within arm's reach of the kettle and the guarded coals, the night becomes smaller. Cold still exists, but it no longer owns every inch of the world. A little circle of heat has been made, and for now, that is enough. Outside the wooden walls, the horse shifts its weight, and the whole night seems to listen. You hear one hoof lift from the frozen ground, pause, then settle with a blunt, careful knock. Another hoof follows. The sound is not loud, yet it travels through the caravan floor as a small message from the dark. The animal is awake enough to remind the world that the journey depends on flesh, not fantasy. The fire may warm you, the blankets may soften your shoulders, but the miles belong first to the horse. You sit still and let the sounds arrange themselves. Leather creaks where the harness hangs or rests. A chain gives a tiny clink. The horse exhales, long and cloudy, and you can almost picture the breath whitening in the air. It may lower its head toward a nosebag of oats, or pull at a bundle of hay tied where frost cannot quite ruin it. Its ears turn toward every small disturbance, wind in the hedge, a distant fox cry, the faint groan of wood as the caravan settles. Human beings call this silence, which is charmingly arrogant. To a horse, the night is full of news. Printed stable guides and transport manuals from the 19th century make clear that horses were essential to English road life. Pulling carts, coaches, vans, farm wagons, tradesmen's vehicles, and private carriages through every season. They were not picturesque extras placed politely in the background. They were engines with hearts, appetites, moods, injuries, and strong opinions about hills. A good horse could make a living possible. A lame horse could stop work, delay trade, and turn a simple journey into a problem with 4 legs and a very expensive appetite. You think about the care required when the ground is frozen. Hooves need checking. Ice can ball beneath shoes. A sharp stone hidden in a rut can bruise the foot. Harness straps must not rub raw places beneath winter hair. The animal's back must be protected from damp gear. Water matters, even in cold weather, though the horse may nose it suspiciously if it is iced over. As if personally insulted by the behaviour of physics, you cannot simply tie a horse outside and forget it, not if you expect loyalty when dawn comes pale over the fields. The smell of the animal reaches you in waves whenever a draught slips around the door. Warm hide, hay dust, damp leather, old straw, and that unmistakable stable scent that announces life without apology. It is earthy and grounding. It reminds you that this travelling shelter is not separate from the creature outside. The caravan and horse form one working body. Shafts, traces, collar, wheels, floorboards, reins, breath, and muscle belong to the same arrangement. Remove the horse, and the home becomes a room stranded in mud. Care for the horse, and the road opens again. A curious footnote from old horse culture concerns the use of decorative horse brasses, often shaped as moons, hearts, stars, and other lucky signs, fastened to harness for beauty and protection. Some people believed such ornaments guarded animals from ill fortune or the jealous glance of a stranger. Others simply liked the sparkle, which is also understandable. Even a workhorse deserves a little ceremony. In lantern light, a polished brass could flash warmly against dark leather, making the animal look like a patient knight of the road, though probably a knight mostly interested in supper. You listen as the horse stamps once, harder now. Perhaps it is clearing stiffness from a leg, or perhaps it has heard something among the hedges. The sound wakes your attention, but no alarm follows, only another breath, another small offending of weight. Horses sleep differently from humans. They can rest while standing and locking their legs in a way that seems almost unfair to anyone who has ever needed a proper pillow. Yet they also need deeper rest lying down when they can safely manage it. On the road, rest is negotiated around harness, weather, grazing, feeding, and jersey and kiror. Researchers still disagree over how to balance the history of horses as labouring tools with the emotional bonds many drivers, families, and working people clearly formed with them. To call the animal merely property feels too cold. To imagine every relationship as tender friendship may be too soft. The truth likely stands in the frosty space between. A horse could be valued, loved, overworked, praised, sold, mourned, and depended upon, sometimes by the same hands. History rarely gives you tidy feelings. It gives you complicated ones and asks you to sit quietly with them. The horse outside gives a low sound, not quite a neigh, more of a deep body murmur. You imagine a hand reaching out to stroke the neck, feeling the thick winter coat and the powerful warmth beneath it. The neck might be damp at the roots of the hair from the day's labour. The mane might hold bits of straw. The animal's eye, dark and reflective, would catch the lantern glow with calm mystery. There is intelligence there, not human intelligence in a costume, but another kind shaped by herd fear. Memory, habit, and trust. Night travel with horses demands caution. Frozen roads can be treacherous under a thin dusting of snow. A wheel can slide toward a ditch. A horse can shy at a shadow that a human never notices. Yet the same animal may also sense bad footing sooner than the driver does. You may think you are guiding it, and then discover, with appropriate humility, that it is guiding you. Many road people learn to read not only the reins but the ears, the pace, the breathing, the small tightening that says something ahead has changed. The caravan grows quiet around you. The coals settle. Your own breathing slows. Outside, the horse keeps its patient watch beneath the cold sky. It is not a statue of noble endurance. It is a living creature with tired muscles, warm blood, and a mouth searching now and then for another mouthful of hay. That makes its steadiness more moving, not less. The road has asked much of it. The night asks only that it rest, listen, and be ready when the frozen world begins to pale. You lie back and let the rhythm outside become part of sleep. Hoof against ground, breath into frost, leather answering, small movements. The animal stands close, not seen, but deeply present. A dark, warm strength beside the wooden walls. In that steady nearness, the caravan feels less alone on the winter road. The bedding waits in folded layers, plain as field grass and more precious than velvet. You reach for it with hands that have begun to thaw, and the wool answers with a rough, dry touch. It does not flatter the skin, It does not glide like silk in some grand bedroom where servants worry about pillows as if civilization depends on their angle. This blanket is honest. It scratches a little. It smells faintly of smoke, lanolin, cedar, and the long road. It has one purpose, and it takes that purpose personally. You spread the first layer over the narrow sleeping bench. The cushion beneath is firm, shaped by use, and set above a storage box that holds the secrets of compact living. A rolled rug comes a bout next, heavy at the edges, useful for blocking a draught when laid against the door or tucked along the floor. Then another blanket, thicker and darker, with a mended corner where careful fingers have drawn the wool together. The repair is not hidden. It sits proudly, a small square of survival, in a caravan. Even a patch seems to say, yes, the world pulled at me, and I stayed. The cold does not attack only from the air. It climbs. Frozen ground sends its chill upward through wheels, axle, step and boards. You feel it first in the soles of your feet, then behind the knees, then in the lower back when you sit too long without moving. So the bed must become a little fortress against cold rising from below. Straw, if clean and dry, can be tucked beneath bedding or used in sacks as a poor but clever mattress. It traps air, and trapped air is a quiet friend in winter. Simple science dressed in farmyard clothing. Surviving domestic manuals and rural accounts show that straw mattresses, wool blankets, rugs, cloaks, and layered clothing were common defences against cold in 19th century Britain, especially among people without steady access to large heated rooms. Warmth was not bought in one grand gesture. It was assembled, a blanket here, a sack there, a shawl over the feet, a cap over the head, a board gap stopped with cloth. The body became part of the design, curled and covered, conserving heat like a bank clerk guarding coins. You remove your outer coat only halfway at first, because caution has a long memory in cold weather. The sleeves stay near your arms, your boots remain close to the bed, turned away from the stove but not abandoned to freeze into cruel little leather boxes by morning. Stockings may be changed if a dry pair exists. Damp wool is a traitor. Dry wool is a saint with a scratchy personality. You tuck the lower blanket around your legs and discover that tight edges matter. Loose bedding lets cold creep in with the smug confidence of a cat invited nowhere. A curious bedside habit among some travellers and rural families was warming a stone, brick, or wrapped bottle near the fire, then placing it at the foot of the bed to ease the first bitter minutes of lying down. One old tale even speaks of people using a flat iron wrapped in cloth, which sounds comforting until you remember that scorched blankets are rarely part of a peaceful night. Still, the idea is tender. Warmth can be carried, stored, and placed where the body most pleads for mercy. Feet, as usual, are dramatic, but not wrong. You slide deeper beneath the covers. The ceiling hangs close above you. The window curtain trembles once, then settles. The mattress rustles faintly as the straw or padding shifts beneath your weight. It is not the silence of a feather bed in a quiet country house. It is a bed that speaks in whispers. Straw crackles, wood ticks, wool drags softly against your sleeve. These sounds do not disturb the room, they define it. They tell you that sleep here is not careless. It is prepared, negotiated, and earned. Arguments remain unsettled about how far descriptions of travelling caravan comfort were shaped by romantic visitors, hostile officials, or the memories of families who loved their wagons despite hardship. One person sees misery in cramped bedding and smoke-scented blankets. Another sees independence, ingenuity, and a home arranged by hands that know every inch of it. You lie there and understand why the argument resists a neat answer. The bed is narrow, the air is cold near the floor. Yet the blankets hold, the coals glow, and the body begins to trust the space. You pull a shawl around your shoulders. A nightcap would not be vanity here, it would be engineering. So much warmth leaves through an uncovered head that even the proudest sleeper might accept a soft cap and surrender dignity for survival. There is something deeply human in this, the way comfort so often comes through small humbling acts. You tuck your chin, you bend your knees slightly, you keep one hand inside the blanket, the other near the edge in case the kettle rattles or the fire needs checking. The shape of your body becomes practical, almost ancient. The smell of the bedding changes as it warms around you. Wool releases a gentle animal sweetness. Smoke rises from the fibres when your cheek presses into the folded edge. A lavender spore, dry and faint, may have been tucked into the storage chest to discourage moths and make the linens less road-worn. It is not perfume in the grand sense. It is more like a memory of summer trapped in a cupboard, doing its best under difficult circumstances. You breathe it in slowly. Outside, frost silver coats the world. Inside, the bed becomes a nest of patched wool, straw, cloth, and common sense. It is not luxury woe, but luxury has always been a slippery little show-off. This is something quieter. This is the body finding refuge in layers, in care, in habits learned by cold fingers and repeated without applause. Your breathing lengthens. The blankets grow warmer where they touch you. The floor still holds the winter below, but it no longer reaches quite so high. Sleep draws near, wrapped in wool, smelling of smoke and resting lightly on the frozen road. The smell of supper rises softly, and the caravan seems to widen around it. A small pot sits near the heat, its lid trembling every now and then as if the stew inside is quietly practicing conversation. Steam gathers under the roof and drifts along the boards, carrying the scent of onions, barley, pepper, and meat stretched farther than pride might prefer. You sit close with a cup between your hands, listening to the gentle knock of spoon against tin. Hunger, in this small room, is not dramatic.
It is steady, patient, and very persuasive.
The meal is simple because the road does not reward fuss. A loaf rests on a folded cloth, its crust hard enough to test the teeth but still friendly when torn and dipped. There is butter if fortune has been kind, dripping if fortune has been practical, and cheese if someone has managed the day well. Tea waits in the kettle, dark and strong, made to warm the hands as much as the throat. Nobody here is arranging parsley for applause. Supper is not a performance. It is fuel, comfort, and ceremony in one modest bowl. Records from 19th century Britain show that bread, tea, potatoes, porridge, broth, cheese, onions, and occasional meat formed the backbone of many working-class meals, with the exact quality depending on wages, place, season, and luck. For people who lived by movement, food also had to travel well. It had to keep without spoiling too quickly. It had to fit into boxes, tins, sacks, or baskets. It had to forgive delays caused by weather, markets, tolls, and horses who did not care whether anyone fancied supper at a fashionable hour. You take a piece of bread and feel its rough edge press into your thumb. The stew darkens it at once. A carrot, softened almost to sweetness, gives way under the spoon. Barley thickens the broth, making the meal feel larger than its ingredients. This is old kitchen wisdom. The quiet art of making a pot feed more mouths than the pot seems to promise. Water becomes broth. Broth becomes supper. Supper becomes sleep. It is not glamorous, unless you have been cold all day, in which case it becomes poetry wearing an apron. The cup of tea changes the room. Its steam curls up through lamplight. The tannic scent fills the close air with something brisk and civilizing, which is impressive, since the table may be your lap and the floor may still remember mud. Tea in 19th century England is not merely a drink, it is habit. Pause, social signal, medicine for low spirits, and proof that even on a frozen road, order has not entirely fled. You sip it carefully, too fast, and you burn your tongue, too slow. And winter steals the advantage. History, as usual, asks for balance. A curious roadside tale claims that some travellers kept a perpetual stew going over several meals, adding scraps, roots, water, and bones as they came to hand. Whether every such tale is true or embroidered for colour is hard to know, but the idea makes practical sense in a world where waste feels almost sinful. A pot that never quite begins again has a comforting stubbornness. It says there is still something left. The modern stomach may raise one eyebrow, but the cold body understands at once. You notice how supper organises the tiny space. The pot must sit where it will not tip. The cups must be passed with care. The bread must be cut without elbowing the lamp, the wall, or anyone's patience. A knife wipes clean on a crust. A spoon is shared, perhaps, or guarded by its owner with the comic seriousness. The door stays shut to hold warmth, yet a small vent must answer the smoke. Every gesture matters. Eating here is not hurried exactly, but it is economical, full of small practice movements that keep comfort from collapsing into clutter. The floor gives a slight sway as the wind presses outside. The horse stamps beyond the wall. Inside, supper continues with the calm authority of a ritual. You hear chewing, swallowing, the soft scrape of a bowl, the faint hiss from the stove. The stew coats your mouth with salt and warmth. Onion sweetness singers. A bit of pepper wakes the tongue. Bread soaks up the last broth, because leaving it would be an insult to both hunger and common sense. Even the crumbs are noticed. Crumbs mean food, and food is never invisible here. Some historians differ over whether meals among road families should be read mostly as signs of poverty, signs of independence, or evidence of a distinctive domestic culture shaped by movement. The answer shifts with the household. A thin supper can reveal hardship. A shared pot can reveal skill. A carefully packed tea tin can reveal pride. You feel how all three truths can sit together in the same steam. The meal may be plain, but it is not empty. It carries work, planning, taste, memory, and affection, all ladled into a bowl small enough to hold in two hands. There may be a sweet if the day has been fortunate, a little jam scraped from a jar, an apple wrinkled by storage, a piece of seed cake wrapped in cloth, or a sugar lump saved for someone who needs cheering. Such small luxuries shine brighter when space and money are tight. A child might watch the knife approach the jam with the seriousness of a judge. An elder might pretend not to want the sweeter piece, which fools nobody but preserves dignity. Supper includes these delicate negotiations. Love often travels disguised as portion size. As the pot empties, the caravan settles into a fuller quiet. Hunger loosens its grip, shoulders lower. Conversation, if it comes, grows slower. The warmth of food spreads from the stomach outward, meeting the heat of the coals and the shelter of the walls. You hold the last sip of tea in your mouth for a moment, tasting smoke, iron, and leaves. Outside, the frozen ground waits without pity. Inside, a bowl has done its work. Bread, broth, tea, and patience have turned a narrow winter room into a place where the body can finally forgive the day. The road beneath the caravan is not a line on a map. It is a substance with moods. Tonight it is hard, pale, and ridged, frozen into the shapes left by many wheels before yours. The iron rim finds each rut with the grim loyalty of a person who remembers every insult. You feel the jolt through the floor, up through the bench, and into your bones. The caravan does not glide. It argues forward, one careful yard at a time, while the horse lowers its head and commits itself to the old bargain between strength and distance. Outside the small window, the lane narrows between hedges. Their branches reach inward like black fingers, brushing the side panels with a dry, scratching sound. Now and then, the wheel drops into a hardened groove and rises with a wooden groan. A cup trembles on a shelf. A spoon taps once inside a drawer. The whole home seems to take a breath and hold itself together. You discover that travel is not a smooth romance here. It is a test of joints, bolts, leather, patience, and teeth that would prefer not to chatter. A plain historical truth rests under every jolt. During the 19th century, many important roads in England were maintained by turnpike trusts, which charged tolls at gates or bars to pay for repairs. Better road building methods also spread, especially the use of carefully broken stone laid in layers, associated with the engineer John Macadam. Yet improvement did not reach every lane equally. Main routes might become firmer and better drained, while side roads remained muddy, deeply rutted, or frozen into roughness. Progress, naturally, arrived like a guest who visited the front parlour and ignored the scullery. You hear the driver slow the horse as a dark shape appears ahead. Tollgate stands across the road, with a small house beside it, its window glowing faintly. The gatekeeper has likely been watching the night with a candle, a ledger, and the kind of patience that comes from charging cold travellers small sums of money while pretending not to enjoy their irritation. The horse stops, harness leather creaks, someone steps down, voices pass through the cold, low and practical. A fee must be paid, or a question answered, or a complaint politely swallowed. Tolls could depend on the type of vehicle, the number of animals, the width of wheels, or the goods being carried. That sounds simple until you are the tired person paying. Some roads charged less for broad wheels because wider wheels helped press and smooth the surface rather than cutting it into narrow ruts. A curious roadside trick followed from this system. Certain travellers searched for little lanes around toll gates, avoiding fees by taking rougher routes. It saved money, perhaps, but it also invited mud, delay, and the possibility of discovering that economy has led you directly into a ditch. Very thrifty, very cold, very educational. The gate opens with a wooden scrape. The caravan moves again, passing close to the toll house. For a moment, you glimpse the keeper's world, a chair near the fire, a hanging coat, a table with papers, a window set to watch everyone who comes and goes. It is a small kingdom of barriers and coins. The keeper knows who passes often, who pays late, who travels with goods, who looks desperate, who claims the horse is smaller than it plainly is. Roads create their own society, and toll gates are where that society briefly stops and counts itself. You begin to feel how money shapes movement. A person with steady means may choose the better road, pay the gate, reach town sooner, and arrive with goods less shaken. A poorer traveller may count every coin and risk the side lane. A family on wheels must weigh cost against safety, time against weather, and pride against hunger. The frozen ground does not care about these calculations. The road simply lies there, ridged and waiting, while human beings make decisions over pennies, hooves, and the last light. No settlement has been reached among historians on whether turnpike roads mainly helped ordinary travellers by improving movement or burdened poorer people by making access to good routes more expensive. Both claims carry weight. Better roads could lower transport costs, connect markets, and make journeys less punishing. Yet a toll at the wrong moment could feel like a locked door placed in the middle of the countryside. You sit with that contradiction as the caravan rocks onward. Improvement is rarely pure. It tends to arrive with a bill. The road bends downhill, and the driver speaks gently to the horse. The animal shortens its step on a frozen slope. Speed is not courage. It is foolishness wearing a hat. The brake, if fitted, must be used carefully. The wheels may slide where frost has polished the surface. A ditch waits beside the lane, full of stiff grass and shadow. You feel each careful movement, the slow pull, the slight lean, the restrained weight of the caravan pressing behind the horse, or A road is not just the ground ahead, it is also the danger beside you. At a crossroads, a signpost stands crooked, its painted arms pale in the starlight. One road leads toward a market town, another disappears between fields, another climbs toward a ridge where the wind will be sharper. The choices seem quiet, but each carries consequences. Shelter, water call, grazing, work, trade, welcome, suspicion, repair, and whether all lie hidden in the direction chosen. The map may show lines, the traveller feels possibilities. The wheels find a steadier surface at last. The jolting softens into a slow, rocking rhythm. Inside, the lantern steadies. Outside, the frozen ruts shine faintly under the winter sky. You sense the old road not as background, but as a powerful character in the night, shaping pace, cost, mood, and memory. Every mile has texture, every gate has a price, every rut has a voice, and the caravan, patient and creaking, continues through England's cold, dark lanes as though carried by the road itself. The lantern lifts the room out of darkness one trembling inch at a time. Its flame does not conquer the night. It merely persuades a few walls, a shelf, a cup, and your own hands to remain visible, and the glass chimney is smudged near the top, and the light inside it leans whenever the wind presses at the caravan seams. Yellow brightness slides across painted panels, then pulls away. A brass hook flashes, fades, and flashes again. The shadows move as if they are thinking, which is exactly what shadows should not be allowed to do at bedtime. You sit with your back near the warm boards and watch the interior become a little theatre. The lantern turns ordinary objects into actors. A hanging coat becomes a hunched figure until your eyes correct the insult. A kettle handle becomes a crescent of dark metal. A spoon throws a long, thin shadow that stretches across the wall like a road on a map. The painted trim, red, green, cream, or blue beneath the soot and travelled dust, catches the glow in worn places. Every brushstroke seems deeper in lamplight, as if colour itself has settled down for the night. Common household history shows that many people in 19th century England relied on candles, oil lamps, rushlights, and later paraffin lamps for evening light. While widespread electric lighting remained beyond the daily reach of most ordinary homes, for much of the century, light was therefore something to measure and protect. A candle burned down a subcontour, oil ran out. A wick needed trimming, a lamp smoked if neglected. Illumination was not a switch on a wall, it was a task, a cost, and a small responsibility with a flame at its centre. You notice the care in the way the lantern is placed. It hangs where it can brighten the room without swinging into cloth or hair. The wick is not turned too high. A greedy flame would smoke, waste fuel, and stain the glass until everyone looked as though they lived inside a chimney. The lantern sits above the reach of careless feet, yet low enough to be adjusted. You begin to understand that even light has manners here. It must be useful, modest, and watched. Outside the curtain, the night thickens. You lift one edge and see almost nothing at first. The glass reflects your own face, pale and floating over the dark. A mildly unsettling visitor you did not invite. Beyond it, the horse is only a dense shape near the shafts. The road has disappeared except where frost gives back a little silver. Hedge branches tremble in the wind, then vanish. The world has not ended. Of course, but the lantern makes it feel as though the caravan is sailing through a black sea, with only this small golden cabin above the waves. A peculiar bit of countryside lore claimed that mysterious lights seen over marshes or low wet ground might be spirits, warnings, or hidden treasure flames. Today you might speak of gases, reflections, tired eyes, or the grand human talent for making a story out of poor visibility. Yet on a cold road, with a lantern swinging and dark fields beyond the glass. You can understand why people gave strange light strange meanings. Night reduces certainty. A glow far away becomes a question. A flicker in the hedge becomes a visitor. The mind, bless it, begins decorating the unknown. The flame crackles faintly. You hear it more than you expect because the room has become so still. The lantern adds its own scent, warm oil, hot mantle, and a slightly bitter thread of smoke when the draught catches it wrongly. It mingles with wool, wood, coal, and the remains of supper. The smell is not pure, but it is comforting because it belongs to shelter. Clean air is lovely and certainly, but at midnight on a winter road, a little lamp smoke may feel like civilization being stubborn. The painted panels seem to glow more richly now. Their colours may have been chosen to delight the owner, to advertise pride, to continue a family style, or simply to make a hard life look less grey. A flower on a cupboard door opens in lamplight. A border curls around a panel. A little nick in the paint reveals older layers beneath, like years showing through one another. Beauty in a travelling home has to survive knocks, rain, dust, smoke, and curious fingers. That makes it less delicate and more impressive. Specialists remain divided over whether the bright decoration of horse-drawn living wagons should be understood mainly as personal taste, commercial display, cultural identity, or later romantic reinvention. The question matters because beauty is never just pretty when space is scarce. To paint a door carefully is to say that this little room deserves attention. To polish a fitting is to insist that movement does not erase dignity. To hang a lantern where it warms the colours is to make night less powerful for a while. You lower the curtain again. The room returns to its golden limits. A shadow climbs the curved roof when the flame bends. Another slides across your blanket and disappears behind the storage chest. In this soft, wavering light, nothing feels fixed, yet everything feels held. Oh. You can see enough to pour tea, mend a strap, find a glove, calm a child ear, read a worn page, or sit without being swallowed by the dark. That is the lantern's quiet gift. It gives not brilliance, but nearness. The wind moves along the side of the caravan, making the flame lean once more. For a breath, the painted walls shiver with light. The outside world remains strange, silent, and vast, full of fields you cannot see and roads you cannot measure. Inside, the lantern keeps its small watch. It turns wood into amber, brass into sparks, and shadow into company. You rest your eyes on the flame until it blurs gently, and the room floats around you, warm, narrow, and softly lit, like a secret kept against the winter dark. The road does not belong to one kind of traveller. As the night deepens around the caravan, you begin to sense the unseen company that has passed along these lanes in every season. Hawkers with packs cutting into their shoulders, chair menders carrying tools wrapped in cloth, basket sellers with willow goods stacked high, knife grinders with wheels and stones, show people with painted carts, tired animals, bright posters, and jokes polished smooth from too much use. Families moving together because work, kinship, and necessity have braided their lives to the road. You hear them first in imagination, then almost in the wind itself. A bell tied to a pony harness. The clatter of pans against a barrow, the squeak of a fiddle case, or the cough of someone who has walked too long in damp weather. These are not grand armies or royal processions, though grand history does adore a crown, poor thing. These are smaller movements, repeated across years, feeding villages with goods, repairs, music, news, spectacle, and rumour. They arrive at the edge of a town not as strangers exactly, but not as locals either. That middle place can be useful. It can also be lonely. Trade directories, census entries, and local records from 19th century England make clear that itinerant workers served many communities, selling small goods, repairing household items, sharpening tools, entertaining crowds, and carrying news between scattered settlements. Settled people often depended on such services. A broken pot still needs mending, a dull knife still needs an edge, a fair still needs a performer who can make children stare and adults pretend they are not staring too. Yet the same visitors who provided useful work could be watched with suspicion once evening came. You picture a hawker stopping near a village green, opening a pack to show needles, ribbons, buttons, lace, combs, thread, cheap brooches, and little household necessities. A woman from a cottage steps closer, counting coins in her palm. A child peers from behind her skirt. There is bargaining. Of course, because bargaining is humanity turning thrift into theatre. The seller praises the goods, the buyer doubts the quality. Both sides know the dance. A ribbon changes hands, news travels with it. Who has married? Who has died? Which road is flooded? Which inn has watered the beer so bravely that even the horses are offended? A tinker may arrive with a small kit for repairing kettles, pans, and metalware. The word can be used carelessly by outsiders, sometimes kindly, sometimes not, and often with more judgment than understanding. You watch skilled hands turn a damaged pot, examine a split seam, patch a leak, and make useful what might otherwise be lost. In a world where many households cannot replace goods easily, repair is not shabby, it is wisdom, it is economy with blackened fingers. The ringing tap of metalwork becomes a small music of survival. One peculiar roadside detail appears in old accounts of travelling entertainers who carried peep shows, magic lanterns, performing animals, puppets, or mechanical curiosities from fair to fair. A village might see wonders through a little box, paying a coin for a painted scene of distant lands, battles, royal events, or impossible creatures. The display could be educational, ridiculous, misleading, or all three at once, which is honestly a very efficient use of a coin. For people who rarely travelled far, such shows made the world feel larger, stranger, and slightly less obedient. The Caravan Road is also crossed by families whose identity and history are more deeply rooted in movement than a single trade can explain. Some live by seasonal labour, some follow fairs, some mend, sell, trade horses, tell fortunes, play music, or combine work as circumstances demand. Their lives may include strong kin networks, remembered stopping places, and knowledge of friendly farms, hostile parishes, usable water, safe hedges, and market days worth the trouble. The road becomes an archive carried in memory. Where to halt, whom to avoid, which lane floods, which constable asks too many questions. Yet welcome is rarely simple. A village may need a mender, a seller, or a fiddler. Then mutter. When the wagon remains near the common, hospitality can turn thin after sunset. Local officials may worry about poor relief, theft, trespass, disorder, or simply the discomfort of people who do not fit the settled pattern. The suspicion is not always based on facts. Often it grows from old fear, class prejudice, and the habit of blaming outsiders when life feels uncertain. You can almost hear the whispered question at the edge of the green. Who are they? How long will they stay? What do they want? Researchers continue to quarrel over how much official hostility toward travelling people came from real concerns about local resources and how much came from prejudice against mobility itself. The distinction matters. Yet the lived experience may have felt similar to those on the road. A gate closed either way, a field denied either way, a child stared at either way. Still, suspicion did not erase resilience. People adapted with humour, caution, bargaining, family loyalty, and the sharp reading of faces that becomes necessary when every stopping place must be judged quickly. The night outside your caravan feels fuller now. Not crowded, but inhabited by memory. You sense the many lives that have moved through such lanes, bringing needles, songs, repaired pans, gossip, charms, horses, ribbons, laughter, and unease. They are not ornaments in a cosy winter picture, they are workers, parents, children, elders, traders, artists, survivors. Some are welcomed at the door and doubted at the gate. Some are invited to mend the pot and then asked to move on. History can be very rude in that way, accepting the service while mistrusting the servant. A gust touches the wall, and the lantern gives a small tremble somewhere beyond the frost. Another traveller may be sleeping under canvas, in a cart, in a barn corner, or beside a low fire carefully hidden from the wind. You rest inside the narrow warmth and let the thoughts settle gently. The road is not empty, carries lives at the margins, and those margins are not silent. They speak through wheel tracks, market cries, patched kettles, fiddle tunes, and the steady dignity of people who make a home wherever the night allows. The hour before sleep is not empty. It is filled with small duties, the kind that look humble until one of them is forgotten. Then the humble thing becomes enormous, usually at the worst possible moment, because history enjoys teaching practical lessons with cold fingers. You sit near the door and listen as the night work begins outside. A buckle is loosened. A strap slides through a keeper. The horse blows softly, as if relieved to be released from the day's pull. The caravan may rest, but rest has to be prepared. You step down carefully onto the frozen ground. The cold strikes upward through your boots at once, sharp and personal. Above you, the sky is clear enough to show hard stars. The horse stands close, dark and patient, its harness dull with the frost at the edges. The collar must be checked where it touched the shoulders. The traces must be lifted clear. The bridle must come off gently, not dragged over tired ears by some impatient genius who thinks animals are furniture. A hand passes along the neck, feeling for heat, swelling, damp hair, and the little warnings that tomorrow could become difficult. Working horses in 19th century England required daily care, including feeding, watering, grooming, checking harness fit, and watching for lameness or sores. That fact may sound plain, yet it shaped the whole rhythm of travel. A horse could not be treated like a machine waiting quietly for morning. It needed oats or hay, water that was not frozen solid, legs rubbed if chilled, and a place to stand with some shelter from the worst wind. Every mile owed a debt to such care. You hear hay pulled from a sack or net, dry stems whispering in the dark. The horse lowers its head with serious interest. Supper, apparently, is a language understood across species. A bucket is checked, and if ice has formed across the top, it must be broken with a stick or heel. The sound is brittle and bright. Water sloshes underneath, black in the starlight. You imagine the hands that carry it, careful not to spill too much, because fetching water at night is nobody's favourite hobby, not even a charming historical setting. The wheels come next. A lantern is held low, and light runs over iron rims, wooden spokes, hubs, and the dark grease near the axle. A loose pin, a cracked spoke, or a damaged rim might not matter while everyone is tired and stationary, but by morning it could become a roadside calamity with a very smug face. The wheel is touched, tested, perhaps nudged with a boot. The axle cap is examined. Mud, straw, and frozen clods are cleared from places where they should not be. The work is slow because cold hands are clumsy, and clumsy hands near iron fittings need patience. A curious little road habit was the habit of listening to a wheel as much as looking at it. Experienced drivers could often recognize trouble from a change in sound, a squeal, grind, knock, or uneven rhythm. The vehicle spoke through motion, and those who knew it listened the way others listen to a clock in the night. One sharp ear could save a long walk, a broken shaft, or an argument with a wheelwright who would certainly make professional noises of disappointment. Inside the caravan, order must be restored. cups are set where they will not rattle loose. The knife is put away. Food is covered against mice, damp, and the bold appetite of anyone who wakes hungry and pretends it was an emergency. The kettle is checked. The stove door is secured. The coals are banked low enough to last, but not high enough to threaten the room. A vent is left with care, because warmth without air is a poor bargain. Fire must be trusted only as far as it is watched. The door latch is tried once, then again. A window curtain is tucked to stop a draught. Damp stockings are placed where they may dry but not smoke. Boots are positioned for a quick reach if trouble comes. The lantern is lowered, trimmed, or shaded. Outside, a rope may be checked, a wheel chock set against rolling, and the step cleared so no one begins the morning by slipping into history face first. This is not drama, this is competence. And competence is one of the most soothing sounds in the world. A serious discussion continues among historians about how much domestic labour in mobile households has been underestimated, especially the work of women and older children who cooked, mended, packed, cleaned, soothed, traded, watched infants, guarded belongings, and kept the living space usable. The road may look free from a distance, all sky in motion. Up close, it is full of labour, much of it quiet and repetitive. Freedom, if it exists here, travels with a broom, a needle, a bucket, and a very firm memory for where the matches were put. You climb back inside. The warmth receives you slowly, not with grandeur, but with relief. Your fingers smell faintly of leather, smoke, hay, and cold iron. The little room looks calmer now. The pot is covered, the bedding is ready, the light is lowered. The fire is behaving itself, which is always nice of fire when it remembers. Outside, the horse chews steadily, each slow pull of hay sounding like the night being softened. The final check is almost silent. You listen for the horse, you listen for the wind, you listen for any strange shift in the caravan's weight. Nothing urgent answers. The frozen road lies beyond the door, waiting under stars. But the duties have built a circle of safety around sleep. Harness tended, wheels watched, water given, coals guarded, latch closed. Only then does rest become possible. You settle down, held not only by blankets and warmth, but by the deep comfort of tasks completed well. Weather rules the road with a calm expression and absolutely no interest in your plans. The caravan may be packed, the horse may be fed, the kettle may be ready, and the driver may have a destination in mind, but the sky keeps the final vote. Tonight the frost has made its decision. It lies across the fields like powdered glass, stiffening grass, sealing puddles, and turning the road into a hard, uneven ribbon. You feel it through the floorboards, that deep cold rising from the earth, patient as a tax collector and nearly as welcome. The air has changed. It is sharper now, cleaner in the nose, almost bright with cold. When you breathe in, the inside of your chest feels briefly polished. The window glass wears a pale bloom around the edges, tiny feathers of ice spreading where breath has touched it. You trace one with your finger, and it melts into a clear line, then clouds again. Outside, the hedges glitter faintly, each twig catching the lantern glow when the door opens. The road looks beautiful, which is suspicious. Roads often look most beautiful when they are preparing to betray someone. A solid fact anchors this winter mood. In 19th century England, daily travel still depended heavily on weather, since rain, frost, snow, and fog, and thaw could slow carts, damage roads, delay markets, and make some lanes nearly impassable. Even improved turnpike routes could become dangerous in a freeze or exhausting in a wet spell. The difference between a useful road and a miserable one might be a few hours of rain, a night of ice, or a sudden thaw that turns hard ruts into brown paste. Time on the road is never just measured by miles, it is measured by conditions underfoot. You listen to the wind press along the caravan side. It comes in small bursts, not enough to howl, but enough to test every joint and curtain. A draught touches your ankle like a cold fingertip. The flame leans. The horse outside shifts closer to the lee of the wagger, seeking shelter from the moving air. Weather teaches everyone the shape of protection. A wall matters, a hedge matters, a blanket over a horse matters, a dry sock becomes a moral triumph. Fog may come in such country without ceremony. One moment the road is pale beneath the stars, the next the fields vanish, the hedge softens, and the world shrinks to the length of a horse's head. Sound changes in fog, hooves seem nearer than they are. A bell from a distant village arrives without direction. A cart ahead may be heard long before it is seen, or seen only when it is close enough to cause a very educational moment. Moving through fog requires trust, slowness, and a willingness to admit that the landscape has become extremely private. Then there is mud, winter's less elegant cousin. If frost makes the road hard, thaw makes it hungry. A mild rain can loosen the frozen top and leave the wheels cutting deep into the softened track. Mud clings to boots in thick plates. It grabs at wheels. It swallows drop tools with rude enthusiasm. A horse pulling through mud works differently, shoulders leaning, hooves sucking free with wet sounds that seem to come from the earth's stomach. The caravan grows heavier, not because its load has changed, but because the road has decided to join in. One curious countryside belief held that animals could read weather long in advance, with horses growing restless, birds flying low, or cattle lying down as signs of change. Some observations had practical value. Animals do respond to pressure, wind, cold, and habit. Other predictions were cheerfully imaginative, such as trusting a goose bone, an aching knee, or the behaviour of smoke from a chimney to decide the mood of tomorrow. People made weather law because they had to. When your comfort depends on the sky, every cloud becomes a message, even if the cloud is simply minding its own business. Inside the caravan, weather rearranges behaviour. Damp clothing must be dried with caution. Wet boots cannot be left where they freeze stiff. Bedding must be protected from moisture as if it were treasure, because it is. Food must be kept dry, matches, tinder, and paper must be shielded from the creeping damp that enters everything during long rain. In frost, water must be checked. In bay, travel may wait. In thaw, wheels may need clearing. Each kind of weather brings its own list of chores. And none of those lists ask whether you're tired. Experts still differ over whether historical accounts of winter travel exaggerate hardship for dramatic effect or soften it through nostalgia for a slower age. The truth likely shifts with class, place, health, money, and luck. A wealthy traveller delayed at an inn might complain by a roaring fire. A family on the road might face wet bedding, a strained horse, and no friendly yard in sight. A child might remember frost as glittering magic, while a parent remembers the same night as a calculation of fuel, food, and risk. Weather does not make one history, it makes many. You feel that complexity in the quiet. Frost is beautiful, but it bites. Fog is mysterious, but it blinds. Rain refreshes the field, but ruins the track. Snow softens sound, then hides danger. Even a clear sky can be cruel if it lets the heat flee upward into the dark. The weather is not scenery. It is a ruler without a crown, shaping when people move, where they stop and what they eat, how they sleep, and how gently they speak to a tired horse. The lantern trembles again. The coals hold steady. Outside, frozen grass shines under the stars, and the road waits with all its moods folded into silence. You draw the blanket closer and hear the wind pass over the roof like a long, cold hand. For now, shelter holds. The weather remains outside, vast and powerful. But its command has softened at the edge of the firelight. You rest inside that fragile mercy, listening to winter rule the fields while warmth guards a small wooden room on wheels. The curtain moves, though no hand touches it. A thin draft slips around the window frame, lifting the lower edge just enough to let in the voice of the night. Not words, of course. Night is far too old and dramatic for ordinary speech. It prefers scratches, cries, taps, rustles, and those small uncertain sounds that make your mind sit up in bed while your body begs it to stop being so theatrical. You lie still beneath the blankets and listen as the world beyond the caravan begins to reveal itself by sound alone. First comes the wind in the hedge. It's not a single noise, it is a layered whisper. Dry twigs clicking together, dead leaves stirring in the ditch, grass bending under frost. The hedge seems to breathe along the lane, drawing cold air through its bare branches. Then a distant owl calls, low and hollow, a sound that seems made for empty fields and old churchyards. You know it is only a bird, very busy being itself, yet the call travels through the darkness with such solemn authority that it feels almost official. The horse outside answers with a shift of weight. One hoof scrapes the frozen ground. Leather gives a faint complaint. The animal snorts, then settles. Its nearness comforts you, because a horse hears more than you do and worries about different things. If it is calm, perhaps the rustling hedge is merely a hedge. Perhaps the mysterious crack from the lane is only a branch. Perhaps the entire countryside is not plotting anything. Very kind of it, really. A mainstream fact sits quietly inside this darkness. In much of 19th century rural England, night travel could feel uncertain because artificial lighting was limited outside towns. Roads were often lonely, and local law-keeping depended on constables, watchmen, landowners, and later organised police forces that did not appear everywhere at once. Darkness changed the meaning of distance. A cottage half a mile away might be invisible. A person approaching on foot might be heard long before being seen. The same lane that felt ordinary at noon could seem full of hidden intentions by midnight. You hear something far off now, a cart perhaps, or a wagon moving on another road. The sound comes in pieces. A dull wheel knock, a pause, another knock, then silence, then the faintest ring of harness. Sound travels strangely in cold air, clearer in some moments, swallowed in others. You cannot tell whether the traveller is near or distant. The mind begins filling gaps, because the mind hates an empty space and will cheerfully furnish one with robbers, ghosts, lost farmers. And one deeply confused milkman, a curious bit of folklore, claimed that certain night sounds foretold death, weather, visitors, or misfortune. An owl at the window, a dog howling toward a house, a sudden tapping with no visible cause, all could become signs in the popular imagination. Some of this came from old storytelling, some from grief looking for patterns, and some from the simple fact that people heard more at night when there was less to see. You may smile at such belief as from a warm modern room, but under a cold sky, with only wood between you and the dark, the smile becomes a little more respectful. The curtains hold the darkness back, but they do not block it completely. They make the window into a soft square of shadow. Every so often, a moving branch throws a shape across the cloth, long and bent, then gone. The lantern glow inside turns the curtain into a screen where the outside world performs a silent play. You know it is wind, you know it is hedge. Still, your eyes follow each movement, sleep like certainty, and shadows are poor providers of that service. Then comes a human sound, maybe, a crunch on the road, then another. You hold your breath, the horse lifts its head outside, and the harness chain rings once. The sound stops. A fox could do that, a wandering dog, a person cutting across the lane, a late labourer returning from a farm, a poacher moving with careful feet, since game laws and hungry bellies made uneasy neighbours in many places. The night gives you no explanation. It offers only the small evidence of noise and lets your imagination do unpaid labour. Scholarly opinion remains unsettled over how far rural fear of nighttime crime reflected actual danger, moral panic, local rumour, or class suspicion directed at the poor and mobile. The question is not simple. Theft, trespass, and violence did occur, and isolated travellers had reason to be cautious. Yet fear also grew around outsiders, labourers, road people, and anyone whose poverty made settled society nervous. You listen in the dark and understand how easily a footstep can become a judgment. A sound does not arrive innocent when a community has already taught itself whom to fear. The crunching fades, or perhaps it was never as near as it seemed. The horse lowers its head again. Your shoulders release slowly. The caravan resumes its tiny noises. Wood settles. The kettle cools with a faint tick. Ash shifts in the stove. A blanket slides against your coat as you move one knee. These interior sounds become precious because they are known. They belong to the shelter, to the work of the day, to objects placed by familiar hands. Outside noises ask questions. Inside noises answer softly. You are here. You are held. You may rest. Another owl calls, farther away. The wind changes direction and brushes the roof with a long sigh. Somewhere across the fields, a dog barks twice, then gives up. Having apparently decided that one cannot be responsible for every mystery in England, you smile into the blanket. The darkness no longer feels empty. It feels inhabited by animals, weather, distance, caution, memory, and the old human habit of listening for safety. You let the curtain tremble without lifting it. Some mysteries are better left as sounds. The caravan remains warm enough, narrow enough, close enough. Beyond the cloth, the frozen road lies under starlight, carrying footsteps you may never see and voices you may never know. Within the wooden walls, you listen until the sounds separate into layers and the layers soften into rhythm. Wind, hoof, owl, chain, branch, breath. The night keeps speaking, but it no longer startles you. It becomes a lullaby made from darkness, and your thoughts drift towards sleep. The painted wood begins to glow as your eyes grow used to the lamplight. At first, the caravan seems merely dark and close, a practical box on wheels, built to survive cold roads and hard use. Then the colours rise from the shadows, a line of red along a cupboard edge, a green panel softened by smoke, cream-coloured scrollwork around a door, a flower painted with more care than the weather ever deserved. You run your fingers lightly over the surface and feel tiny ridges where paint has gathered along the brush lines. This beauty is not fragile. It has been knocked by elbows, shaken by ruts, dampened by fog, warmed by fire, and rubbed by generations of hands. A grand drawing room may keep its elegance by avoiding trouble. This little room keeps its beauty while meeting trouble every day, which is frankly more impressive. The paint is chipped near the latch. One corner has been touched up with a slightly different shade, close enough in dim light, but not quite the same when the lantern leans toward it. Even the floor feels alive. Perfection would seem rather suspicious in a place that works this hard. A well-supported historical fact is that many horse-drawn living wagons in Britain, especially those used by travelling show families and some road communities, were decorated with painted panels, carved wood, polished metal, and carefully arranged interiors. The decoration was not only for display at fairs or along village streets, it also reflected pride of ownership, craft skill, family taste, and the wish to make a moving dwelling feel complete. A home does not stop being a home because it has wheels. In some ways, the wheels make the care more visible. You notice a carved strip above the cupboard, shallow but graceful. The tool marks are still there if you look closely, not hidden under thick polish. The person who cut it may have worked by daylight, with shavings curling onto a floor already crowded with tasks. Perhaps the design followed a pattern seen elsewhere. Perhaps it came from memory. Perhaps it was invented simply because a plain board looked too lonely. The result is modest, but it changes everything. A carved edge turns storage into furniture. A painted flower turns a panel into a promise. The brass fittings answer the lantern with small sparks. A handle, a hinge, a latch, a hook for a coat, maybe a ring near the doorway. Brass is not quiet when polished. It announces care. It says someone has taken cloth, ash, oil, or paste, and rubbed away tarnish until the metal remembered the sun. On a winter night, that shine matters. It gives the room little suns of its own. Even a tired traveller can look at a polished latch and think, there, that is mine, and I have not let the road defeat it. A curious footnote from Old Wagon Life tells of owners who added lucky signs, painted flowers, birds, moons, or bright patterns not only for beauty but also for protection, memory, or family meaning. A few accounts suggest that certain colours were favoured because they were believed to bring cheer or ward off ill feeling. Though such claims are often difficult to prove, still, belief has a way of clinging to objects that travel through uncertain places. A painted rose may be decoration. It may also be a small shield against loneliness. You shift closer to the door and see how the outer panel has suffered more than the inner one. Rain has dulled the colour, road grit has scratched the lower rail. Near the step, boots have worn a dark patch where people have climbed in and out countless times. Yet the pattern remains. That persistence feels moving. It is one thing to paint a wall that never leaves its street. It is another to paint a home that must face mud, snow, toll gates, stairs, market crowds, and the occasional low branch with absolutely no respect for artistry. Craft workers who built such wagons had to balance strength, weight, storage, movement, and decoration. Wood could not be chosen only for charm. It had to bend, hold, bear strain, and resist the weather as far as any honest material can. The curved roof sheds rain. The panels fit into a frame that must flex without failing. The wheels and undercarriage carry not only goods and bedding, but also the painted identity of the household above them. Beauty rides on engineering. Pride rests on joinery. A loose joint can threaten the flowers as surely as the axle. One lively disagreement among scholars asks whether decorated wagons should be interpreted mainly as working homes, public advertisements, family heirlooms, or later romantic symbols shaped by collectors and museums. The dispute matters because polished wood can mislead the eye. A preserved wagon may look charming under careful lighting, but its original life included smoke, cold, worry, repair, and constant use. At the same time, hardship does not cancel beauty. People under pressure still choose colour, perhaps especially then. You sit quietly and let the painted pattern steady your thoughts. The room feels less cramped when your eyes can travel along lines and curves. A border leads you from door to shelf. A flower rests above a cupboard like a little garden that does not care about frost. A painted bird, stiff and cheerful, seems ready to fly nowhere at all, which is sensible indoors. The colours make a kind of inward landscape. When the outside road is dark, the inside walls offer fields of their own. The wood beneath your palm is cool where the firelight does not reach. Warmer near the stove, smooth where touched often. Rough where age has lifted the grain. You feel the labour hidden in it, sawing, sanding, fitting, painting, polishing, mending. You feel the pride too, not loud, not boastful, but steady. It is the pride of keeping a small world bright when the larger world may not be kind. It is the pride of saying that shelter deserves grace, that usefulness can wear colour, and that even on frozen ground, a home may carry flowers through the night. Morning comes as a grey softening rather than a bright arrival. The frost stays low over the fields, but the sky begins to loosen, turning from iron to pearl above the hedges. You wake to the sound of the horse moving outside, to the faint scrape of a bucket, to the dull knock of a boot on the step. The caravan smells of cooled coals, wool, tea leaves, and yesterday's smoke. For a few slow breaths, you lie still, caught between sleep and the waking road, while the world gathers itself for trade. The market town is not far now. You feel it before you see it, because roads approaching towns have a different energy as small wheel marks cross the frozen surface, footprints appear beside the ruts, a farm cart has passed early if its load perhaps turnips, cabbages, eggs, or firewood. A boy may be driving geese with a stick and far too much confidence. A woman with a basket wrapped in cloth walks steadily toward the same destination. Everyone is being pulled toward the square by need, profit, gossip, and the ancient promise that someone else may have what you lack. Market charters and local records confirm that market towns remained central to English rural life in the 19th century, linking farmers, shopkeepers, craftspeople, labourers, and travellers through weekly trade. Railways and larger shops changed many patterns over time, but the market square still served as a place where food, animals, tools, cloth, news, labour, and credit met face to face. A market was not only an economic event, it was a social weather system. People arrived with goods and left with opinions, which are often easier to carry but harder to sell. As the caravan nears the town, sound gathers in layers, hooves striking stone, wheels grinding over cobbles, a bell from a shop door, a vendor calling over a row of baskets, the mutter of bargaining voices, each one trying to sound reasonable while quietly preparing for battle. You pass cottages with smoke rising from chimneys, a public house sign creaks above the street, a dog trots through the morning as if appointed mayor of everything. The air smells of coal smoke, damp wool, horse dung, fresh bread, raw vegetables, and wet straw. It is not delicate, but it is alive. The caravan enters the edge of the square, and suddenly the narrow night world opens into movement. Stalls are being set up under canvas or bare sky. Tables appear from carts, crates are lifted down, chickens complain in wicker cages, sounding deeply shocked by the commerce. Eggs lie in straw. Apples sit in small pyramids, their skins dull from storage. Turnips, carrots, onions, and potatoes make sober heaps. A butcher sharpens a knife with theatrical seriousness. A baker lifts covered trays, and for one glorious moment the smell of warm bread behaves like a hymn. You step down carefully, feeling the frozen ground give way to trampled slush near the busiest path. Your boots find straw spread to keep the mud down, though mud is a gifted opponent and rarely accepts defeat. People look at the caravan, some glance with curiosity, some with recognition, some with the guarded expression of those deciding whether a traveller is useful, interesting, risky, or merely in the way. A moving home is never invisible in a market square. It carries its own questions in painted wood and iron wheels. A curious market custom in some places was the use of small tokens, tallies, or informal marks of credit between familiar traders and buyers, especially where cash was short or trust had grown over repeated dealings. Not every bargain ended with coins ringing neatly into a palm. Sometimes value moved through promises, remember favours, returned containers, or the quiet power of reputation. One scandalous aside from market law tells of weights being shaved, measures being stretched, and goods being arranged to hide the worst beneath the best. Humanity, it seems, invented the beautiful apple on top very early. You watch a seller arrange ribbons, pins, needles, thread, and little household items on a cloth. Nearby, someone offers mended pans, sharpened blades, or horse gear, A farmer examines a bridle strap with narrowed eyes. Two women discuss the price of butter with the calm intensity of diplomats preventing war. Children drift toward a sweet stall and then remember, under a stern look, that wanting is not the same as buying. A traveller with quick hands may sell a charm, a song, a cheap toy, a printed sheet, or a story about a distant fair improved greatly by repetition. Markets also offer work. A strong back may be hired for unloading. A horse may be traded, judged, praised, insulted, and judged again. A damaged wheel might find a wheelwright. A torn coat might find a needle. News moves as quickly as money. A death in one village, a wedding in another, a road washed out near the mill, a constable asking questions, a fair expected next week, a farmer seeking help, a child recovering from fever. The square becomes a living newspaper, spoken from mouth to mouth, corrected, embroidered, and occasionally ruined by someone with excellent confidence and no facts. Historians continue to dispute how far market life softened the divide between settled people and road travellers, since trade created contact but did not always create acceptance. A traveller might be welcomed while selling useful goods and mistrusted when seeking a place to stop overnight. A family could be known by name in one town and treated as strangers in the next. Commerce opens doors, but it does not always open hearts. Still, in the morning bustle, usefulness has its own dignity. A good repair, a fair price, a lively tune, or a needed object can speak clearly for a person. The sun rises higher, pale and thin, touching the roofs and stall cloths with wheat gold. Steam lifts from horsebacks. Coins pass, hands warm around cups of tea. The caravan stands at the edge of the square, no longer only a shelter from cold, but a participant in the day's exchange. Its painted sides catch the morning light, and its wheels rest among the marks of many journeys. You breathe in bread, smoke, straw and frost, and feel the road turning into society, here, under the winter sky. Survival begins again through trade, talk, patience, and the small brave hope of making the day pay. A settled town can look warm from the road, with lamps in windows, smoke lifting from chimneys, and doors shut against the cold, yet warmth is not always the same as welcome. You stand near the caravan while the market noise thins, and you feel the eyes of the place moving over painted wood, horse gear, bundles, baskets, and faces not rooted to one street. Some looks are friendly enough, some are merely curious, some weigh you like a problem that has arrived with wheels. The square grows quieter, stalls come down, a few coins are counted twice, because trust is lovely but arithmetic is firmer. A constable passes near the pump, his coat dark, his boots muddy, his gaze practised. He may know local families by name. He may know which public house breeds trouble on market day. He may also watch road travellers with the tired suspicion of a man expected to keep order in a world where poverty, movement, and rumour often get mixed together in the same official frown. A firm historical fact stands behind this unease. The Vagrancy Act of 1824 in England and Wales gave authorities power to punish people described as wandering, begging, sleeping in the open, or unable to give a satisfactory account of themselves. In practice, such laws could fall heavily on the poor, the homeless, itinerant workers, and people whose way of life did not fit settled expectations. The law did not need to understand your whole story. It often needed only to find you inconvenient. You sense how fragile belonging can be when home has wheels. A cottage says, "I am fixed here." A shop says, "I pay rent here." A parish register says, "These names belong somewhere." A caravan says something less easily filed away. It says, "I move, I work where work appears, I sleep where weather, permission, and luck allow." To some ears, that sounds like freedom. To others, it sounds like disorder. The same wheels that carry shelter also invite questions from those who believe every life should stand still long enough to be judged. You notice a family near the caravan gathering their goods with quiet efficiency. No one wastes movement. A child folds cloth. An older woman ties a bundle. A man checks a strap while speaking softly to the horse. Their calm is not passivity. It is awareness. They know how quickly curiosity can turn sharp. They know when to smile, when to answer briefly, when to move on, and when not to argue with a man wearing authority like a damp wool blanket. Wise, perhaps. Annoying that wisdom is necessary.
Certainly.
A curious legal oddity from the period is that local officials sometimes cared less about what a traveller had done, and more about whether that person might become chargeable to the parish, meaning a cost to local poor relief. A stranger without visible means could be treated as a future expense before becoming an actual one. Imagine being judged not for your crime, but for the budgetary anxiety you inspire. History does have a gift for making rudeness sound administrative. At the edge of town, a place to stop for the night becomes the question beneath every other question. A patch of common land, a friendly farmer's yard, a roadside verge, a field corner with permission. Each possibility carries risk. Stop too near the town, boy, and you may be moved on. Stop too far away, and water, safety, and trade become harder. Ask politely, and you may be refused. Do not ask, and refusal may arrive louder. Belonging is not abstract here. It is a dry place to halt without being driven out. There are moments of kindness too, and they matter. A farmer allows the horse to stand by a wall out of the wind. A shopkeeper saves broken biscuits or cheap tea. A woman brings out hot water for a sick child. A wheelwright offers a fair price rather than squeezing the desperate. Such gestures do not erase suspicion, but they keep the world from becoming only hard edges. You feel them as small lanterns in the social cold, not grand charity, just human decency doing its work quietly. Still, the old judgments linger. Road people may be accused first when something goes missing. A chicken lost to a fox can become a story about strangers by breakfast. A broken fence may acquire a villain with wheels. Gossip travels faster than a tired horse, and with far less need for oats. You hear how easily a community protects itself by blaming those who cannot remain long enough to answer every charge. Suspicion loves a moving target. There is an unresolved argument among historians about whether official pressure on itinerant people came mainly from fear of crime, anxiety over poor relief, defense of private property, or a deeper distrust of lives that challenged settled order. Each answer catches part of the truth. Law is never only written in books, it is carried in glances, refusals, warnings, and permissions. It appears in who may sleep by a hedge and who is told to keep moving. It appears in who is called industrious and who is called idle, even when both have worked through the same bitter day. You stand beside the caravan as evening gathers again. The town behind you glows with hearths and windows, each light rooted in walls. The road ahead lies dim and open. Between them rests this moving home, neither lawless nor fully accepted, useful yet mistrusted, admired for its colour and doubted for its movement. You feel the ache of that middle place. To belong, for some, means being known by a street. For others, it means being known by kin, by route, by craft, by the horse that answers your hand, by the door that closes behind you wherever the night allows. The latch clicks. The horse breathes into the cold. The caravan holds its small dignity under the stare of settled roofs. You carry no grand protest, only the quiet knowledge that a life can be orderly without being fixed, honourable without being approved, and deeply rooted in memory even while moving over frozen ground. Inside the caravan, childhood has to fold itself neatly, just like blankets, coats, pans, and the tin of tea. There is no spare room waiting with toys scattered across a carpet. There is no nursery door to shut when the grown-ups need quiet. Child of the road learns early that space is shared. Sound carries. elbows matter, and one careless kick can turn a peaceful cup into a flying tragedy. You feel the smallness of the room more strongly when you imagine young bodies sleeping, waking, playing, eating, sulking, laughing, and growing inside it. A child might wake with frost on the window and the smell of coal smoke in the air. The first lesson of the morning is not written in a book. It is practical. Keep your bedding dry. Do not step on the mending. Pass the cup carefully. Mind the stove. Watch the baby. Hold the horse rope while someone fetches water. These lessons are not cruel by nature. They are simply necessary. In a moving home, childhood is not separated from work as neatly as polite society prefers to imagine. Parliament's Education Act of 1870 began the creation of school boards in England and Wales, expanding access to elementary schooling, though attendance, quality, and enforcement varied widely for years. For children who moved with family work, steady schooling could be difficult. A few might attend when stopping in one place long enough. Others learned letters from parents, older siblings, religious workers, printed sheets, signs, markets, and the slow practical arithmetic of trade. Counting change at a stall can sharpen a mind wonderfully, especially when a customer looks far too confident. You sit near the bench and picture a child tracing letters in condensation on the window glass. The finger moves slowly through the mist, making shapes that vanish as quickly as they appear. A name, a number, a crooked house, perhaps a horse with legs of very ambitious length. The world outside offers lessons too, which clouds promise rain, which berries are safe, which farmers are friendly, which dogs only bark and which dogs mean business, which road slopes badly in frost, which market square is worth the cold. A curious detail from children's play in the 19th century is the use of whatever came to hand as a toy, a hoop, a button, a scrap of ribbon, a carved peg, a smooth stone, a piece of string, a broken cup handle turned into the treasure. Road children, like poorer settled children, often made play from leftovers, and honestly, their imaginations did not seem to file a complaint. A willow whistle could become a concert, a chalk mark on the step could become a game, a straw doll could carry more drama than an expensive porcelain lady who looked too fragile to enjoy herself. Yet play has limits here. The road is not always gentle with children. Wheels are dangerous, horses are large and easily startled. Fire burns, strangers ask questions. Weather punishes carelessness. A child learns rules through repetition. Stay close at night. Do not wander behind the caravan when the horse is being harnessed. Keep fingers away from spokes. Listen when called. Some rules may sound stern, but they are tied to protection. A moving household teaches alertness as naturally as another household teaches how to climb stairs without waking a father in a chair. The family circle inside the caravan can be intimate in a way that larger houses rarely manage. Stories are heard by everyone. Laughter travels instantly. A baby cannot cry privately. Poor little tyrant. A joke belongs to the whole room. So does a quarrel. Unfortunately, you feel how closeness can comfort and weary people at the same time. There is warmth in shared breath and known voices. There is also the occasional desire for 5 minutes alone, a luxury so rare it might deserve its own royal title. Academics have not settled the question of whether children in travelling households should be understood mainly as deprived by unstable schooling and social exclusion, or as skilled by early practical training, family networks, and wide experience of place. Both views carry truth. A child may lose chances that a settled school could offer. A child may also gain sharp memory, confidence with animals, quick judgment, trading sense, and a map of roads held entirely in the mind. Childhood on wheels is neither a fairy tale nor a simple sorrow. It is a life shaped by motion. You hear a small voice asking whether the horse dreams. Someone answers softly, Perhaps yes, perhaps of grass, perhaps of roads without hills, which would make any sensible horse happy. Another child laughs under a blanket. Someone is told to hush. The whispering grows smaller, but not immediately obedient, because children have always treated bedtime as a negotiation. The caravan, patient old witness, receives the murmurs into its wooden ribs. A mother or grandmother may mend by low light, pulling thread through cloth while keeping one ear tuned to every child. An older brother may curl near the door, proud of being trusted with a little responsibility. A younger sister may hold a rag doll against her cheek, breathing in wool, smoke, and sleep. The room becomes a nest of ages. Work and tenderness lie side by side. A patched sleeve matters. A warmed cup matters. A bedtime story matters, even if it is interrupted by someone asking a question that has nothing to do with the tale and everything to do with avoiding sleep. Outside, the frozen ground waits under the stars. Inside, the children of the road learn the shape of belonging from voices, blankets, chores, songs, and all the steady animal presence just beyond the wall. Their world is small in inches and wide in miles. It is painted wood, cold mornings, market noise, family jokes, warning glances, and hands that teach by doing. You rest in that and quiet knowledge as the young voices fade. Sleep gathers over the caravan gently, carrying with it the soft, stubborn wonder of growing up on the move. Dawn begins without drama, which is inconsiderate, since you have survived a winter night and might reasonably expect trumpets. Instead, the darkness simply thins, the black window turns grey, the roof boards above you become visible by slow degrees, the coals in the stove have sunk into a dull red bed beneath soft ash. Not dead, not lively, simply tired. The air is cold at the edges of the caravan, especially near the floor, where winter has been waiting with admirable patience and no manners. You open your eyes to a world made of quiet labour. Someone moves carefully near the stove, lifting the lid, testing the remaining heat, coaxing the buried glow with a poker. Ash collapses inward with a soft sigh. A few sparks wake and fade. The kettle is set back in place, not for comfort alone, but for the first necessary cup of the day. Water sounds different in the morning. At night it murmurs like consolation. At dawn it means work is coming. The blankets hold your warmth for a few moments, and leaving them feels like a betrayal of the highest order. Still sore. The road does not wait for delicate feelings. You sit up, pulling the wool around your shoulders, and feel the chill slide beneath your collar. Your breath appears faintly in the air. The bench creaks. A cup is lifted from a shelf. A boot is nudged closer to the stove, where it is warmed just enough to become tolerable rather than noble. You put one foot in, then the other, and accept the day with the expression of someone making a treaty under pressure. A reliable fact from 19th century road life is that travel often began early, especially for those heading to market, seeking work, or trying to cover distance while daylight lasted. Artificial light was costly and limited. Roads could be dangerous in darkness, and winter days were short. Morning was not merely a pretty idea, it was a resource. To waste the first usable light could mean reaching a town late, missing trade, losing a place to halt, or arriving with a horse too tired for good sense. Outside are the horse stamps. The sound carries through the frozen ground and into the caravan floor. One hoof knocks, then another. You imagine the animal shaking frost from its mane, breathing white into the pale air. A blanket or cloth may be lifted from its back if one has been used against the cold. Or the horse's coat steams faintly when worked by hand, and the smell of warm hide rises into the morning. Hay is offered, water is checked. The animal lowers its head with the solemn dignity of one who knows breakfast is the foundation of civilization. You step down from the caravan. The cold meets your face so sharply that sleep leaves at once. Offended and defeated, the fields lie silver under frost. Every blade of grass seems edged with light. The ruts in the lane have hardened again, their ridges shining like old scars. A gate nearby wears a line of white along its top rail. When you touch it, the frost powders your glove. Beyond the hedge, a rook calls, harsh and wakeful, clearly uninterested in anyone's need for a gentle atmosphere. A curious morning belief once found in rural weatherlore claimed that a heavy white frost could promise a bright day, while a sudden dripping thaw might warn of rain. Such sayings were not perfect forecasts. Of course, weather has always enjoyed embarrassing confident humans. Yet people watched frost closely because it shaped roads, animals, washing, fuel, trade, and mood. A frosted field was not only beautiful, it was information spread across the earth. Written in cold silver, the routine gathers speed. Bedding is shaken and folded to push out damp air. The rug near the door is lifted, beaten lightly, and laid where it can dry. Cups are rinsed, the pot is scraped, a crust of bread is divided, tea is poured strong enough to make the tongue stand to attention. A shawl is pinned, a cap is pulled low. The caravan interior changes from sleeping space to travelling space in careful stages, each object returning to its appointed place. Disorder has no room to stretch here. If it tries, someone folds it. Harnessing begins in the grey light. The collar is lifted, heavy and stiff with cold. It must sit correctly on the horse's shoulders, straps are drawn into place, buckles answer with small metal sounds. The traces are fastened, the reins are checked. The animal shifts but stands. Trust is built from repetition, from hands that do not yank, from voices that do not shout unless danger demands it. You watch the work and feel its quiet skill. Nothing here is ornamental. Every strap matters. Every knot has a reason. Interpretations still part company over whether the daily discipline of mobile life should be seen chiefly as hardship, self-reliance, inherited craft, or forced adaptation to a society that offered limited choices. The morning offers no simple answer. There is burden in the cold, yes. There is also competence in the hands that bank the fire, fold the blankets, tend the horse, and turn a narrow home back toward the road. Hardship and pride are not enemies. They often sit side by side, drinking the same bitter tea. The sun has not fully risen, yet the eastern sky grows pale yellow above the fields. Smoke begins to lift from distant cottage chimneys. Somewhere, a dog barks at the morning as if announcing that it personally invented it. The caravan door is closed. The latch clicks. Inside, the last heat of the coals rests under ash, ready to be stirred again when the next halt comes. Outside, the horse leans into the collar, waiting for the word. Then the wheels move. Slowly at first, with a frozen creak, then with a steadier turn. The road receives them. Frost cracks softly beneath iron. The caravan rocks, settles, and follows the lane into the widening light. You feel the day opening, not as a grand promise, but as a series of practical mercies. Tea in the cup, breath in the cold, harness sound, hoof rhythm, a pale sun rising over fields that glitter for a little while, then melt back into earth. The road calls everyone onward, and the caravan answers. The caravan leaves no monument in the field when it moves on, no stone tower, no carved doorway fixed in place, no family name cut deep into a village wall. It leaves wheel marks, flattened frost, a dark patch where the horse stood, a few stray bits of straw, and perhaps the fading scent of smoke. By noon, even those signs may soften. The sun will loosen the ground. A crow will step through the tracks with official importance. The road will take the memory back into itself. Yet the night remains with you. Not as a grand event, not as a heroic tale shouted over trumpets, but as a small warm chamber held against the cold. You remember the way the door closed, the way lamplight touched painted wood, the way the coals rested under ash like a hidden red heart. You remember the horse breathing beyond the wall, the kettle ticking, the blanket's rough edge beneath your chin. History often arrives wearing armour or a crown, because apparently subtlety was unavailable, but sometimes it arrives as a cup warmed between two hands. A solid historical truth rests inside this quiet image. By the late 19th century, railways had transformed travel and trade across England, yet horse-drawn vehicles remained essential for local movement, rural labour, delivery, show life, and many forms of itinerant work. The railway did not erase the road, it changed its meaning. Goods might travel far by train, then continue by horse. People might ride rails between towns, while carts still served farms, markets, lanes, and fairs. Modernity did not sweep in like a clean broom. It arrived unevenly, leaving hooves and steam to share the same century. You feel that overlap now, as if the caravan carries more than bedding and bread. It carries an age in transition, somewhere beyond the fields. A train may be crossing an embankment, its smoke blackening the morning, its iron body moving faster than any horse could dream of moving, without filing a complaint with nature. Yet here on the lane, the pace remains older. Wheels turn through frost, harness pulls, the driver reads the road, the horse feels the ground, the caravan keeps its human scale, and that scale allows you to notice things a faster world would blur. The memory of warmth matters because it was never guaranteed. Heat required fuel, skill, caution and attention. Shelter required maintenance. Food required planning. Safety required listening. Belonging required negotiation. Every comfort inside the caravan was made, remade, protected, and sometimes defended. You realise that the phrase simple life can be rather cheeky, simple from a distance, perhaps up close. It is 1,000 tasks tied together with rope, habit, and hope. A curious footnote from later collectors and artists is that horse-drawn living wagons became objects of nostalgia, displayed, painted, photographed, and admired as symbols of freedom, colour, and vanished road life. That admiration can be sincere, yet it can also polish away the cold feet, the legal suspicion, the damp bedding, and the weary animal at the shafts. Nostalgia loves to bright panel and sometimes forgets who had to scrub it after mud season. Still, the beauty was real, the hardship was real, the memory must be wide enough to hold both. You look again at the imagined interior. The stove is small, the bench is narrow. The cupboard door does not close perfectly unless lifted just so. A cup has a chip at the rim, the paint near the latch has worn thin. These imperfections make the place more truthful. They tell you that a home is not proved by size or permanence. A home is proved by repeated care. Someone banked the coals, someone folded the rug, someone mended the blanket, someone polished the brass, someone checked the horse. Someone made room for sleep. Interpretive debates persist over whether the horse caravan should be remembered chiefly as a practical dwelling, a symbol of marginalisation, a badge of cultural pride, or a romantic emblem of wandering independence. Perhaps the most honest answer refuses to choose only one. A caravan could be work, refuge, burden, inheritance, advertisement, shelter, prison, freedom, and family room all in the same day. Human lives are impolite that way. They do not fit neatly into museum labels or bedtime summaries, no matter how nicely we ask. The frozen ground outside becomes part of the meaning. It reminds you that shelter is precious, because the world is not always gentle. The hot coals inside become the other half of the image. They remind you that people have always made small circles of warmth against vast conditions they cannot control. A field may freeze, a law may threaten, a town may stare, A road may deepen into mud. Still, someone lights a lamp, shares bread, lays a blanket, tells a child to tuck in, and listens for the horse in the dark. You rest with that knowledge as the caravan fades into memory. It moves down the lane until the painted panels are only colour between hedges, then only shape, then only the thought of shape. The wheel marks remain for a little while, pressed into frost like writing in a language of travel. No one needs to read them aloud. They say, enough. A home passed here, a horse laboured here, a fire burned here, people slept here. The cold earth keeps its tumults, the coals keep their glow, and somewhere in the long hush of history, the little caravan remains warm inside, carrying human care through the winter dark. Now let the road grow quiet in your mind. The frost softens, the horse lowers its head, the lantern dims until the painted wood holds only a gentle memory of gold. You have travelled through cold lanes, market noise, guarded doors, careful hands, and small brave comforts. As you settle deeper into rest, tell us in the comments which moments stayed with you most, the warm coals, the listening horse, the painted panels, or the hush of frozen fields. Your thoughts help this quiet community gather around the same little fire. And when you are ready for another slow journey, choose the next video on the channel and let a new old world open softly beside you. May your room feel safe, your blankets warm, and your thoughts unburdened. Sleep comes gently now, like wheels fade down a peaceful road. End of script. Blessings to you and your family.